60 feels like the finish line. You've been working since you were 22. You've paid into CPP for decades. You've stuffed your TFSA when you could. But here's the question almost nobody asks before they hand in the resignation letter. How much does retiring at 60 actually cost, compared to waiting until 65? Not emotionally, financially, in dollars. Because the gap is not what most people think it is. And the reason it's not what they think is that the number they calculate is only about a third of the real number. I'm going to show you the full number today. My name is Nick. I make math videos about Canadian money. Not a financial advisor, just someone who runs the numbers most people skip. And at the end of this video, I want you to have a real answer to whether 60 is the right finish line for you, or whether 5 more years changes your entire retirement picture. Let's run it. When people plan to retire at 60 instead of 65, they usually think about 2 things. First, when they're going to start drawing on their savings. Second, when CPP kicks in. What they almost never think about is what happens to both of those numbers simultaneously for 5 straight years, and what that combination costs them for the rest of their life. It's not one gap, it's 3 gaps sitting on top of each other. And when you add them up, the total is a number that changes how you think about those 5 years entirely. So let's open the ledger. CPP is not the same at 60 as it is at 65. Not close. If you take CPP early, you get a 0.6% reduction for every month before your 65th birthday. 60 months times 0.6%. That equals a permanent 36% cut. Let's put $1 on that. Say you're a solid contributor, not the maximum, but close to average for someone who worked a full career. At 65, you'd receive roughly $950 a month in CPP. At 60, you'd get $608. That's $342 a month less, every single month, for the rest of your life. That penalty doesn't go away when you turn 65. It doesn't reset. It stays at 36% permanently. Over a 20-year retirement, age 65 to 85, that difference adds up to $82,080 less in CPP income than if you had simply waited 5 years. Now, to be fair, you start collecting 5 years earlier, so you're getting something in those early years instead of nothing. But the math on that crossover is sobering. You'd need to live past approximately age 74 just to break even on the decision to take CPP at 60 instead of 65. The average Canadian who makes it to age 60 will live to approximately 83 or 84, which means for most people watching this, taking CPP at 60 is a net loss, just a very slow one. That's gap number 1. Now let's add the part people forget about entirely. Old age security doesn't start until 65. There is no early option. No CPP-style reduction you can take. You retire at 60, you get 0 from OAS for 5 years. Right now, OAS pays approximately $728 a month at age 65. That's $8,736 a year. Over 5 years, that's $43,680 in government income you are not receiving. Income that someone who retires at 65 doesn't need to replace from their own savings. You add that to the CPP reduction, and you're already looking at over $125,000 in lifetime gap, before we've even talked about what you're spending day to day. That's gap number 2. Here's the one that matters most, and the one that almost no one accounts for properly. When you retire at 60, no CPP yet, no OAS yet, your entire lifestyle comes from your savings, your TFSA, your RRSP, your non-registered accounts. Let's use a modest but realistic number, $60,000 a year to live. Groceries, housing, car, a vacation, the basics. For the first 5 years of your retirement, you're pulling $60,000 a year directly from your portfolio. That's $300,000 out of your savings before a single government dollar arrives. Now here's the part retirement calculators usually bury. That $300,000 you pulled out didn't just disappear from your account. It had a future value. If those dollars had stayed invested and compounded at 6% annually for 20 more years, that $300,000 would have been worth approximately $962,000 by the time you turned 80. You didn't spend $300,000. You spent almost $1 million in future purchasing power. That's gap number 3, and it's the largest one. But there's something even more dangerous lurking inside gap number 3. The first 5 years of retirement are the riskiest years for a portfolio. Not because markets are more volatile then, they're not, but because you are drawing money out at the exact same time markets might be going down. And that combination can permanently damage a retirement plan in a way that's almost impossible to recover from. This is called sequence of returns risk. Here's a simple version of it. You retire at 60 with $750,000 saved. In year 1, markets drop 25%. Your portfolio falls from $750,000 to $562,500. Then you pull $60,000 for your year's expenses. You're now at $502,500. To fully recover, just to get back to where you started, you need a 49% return, just to break even. Now compare that to someone who retired at 65 and experienced that exact same 25% market drop, but they're receiving CPP, they're receiving OAS. Their monthly cash needs from the portfolio are much lower, so they draw far less during the downturn, and their recovery math is completely different. Early retirement amplifies sequence risk. Every year you retire early is another year you're more exposed to it, with no government income to cushion the pull on your portfolio. So let's add it all up. Reduced CPP for life, roughly $82,000 less over a 20-year retirement. 5 years of zero OAS, $43,680 out of your own pocket. The opportunity cost of your early drawdown years, approximately $662,000 in lost compounding on the first $300,000 you withdrew. We're talking about a total lifetime wealth gap that, for the average Canadian planning to retire at 60, easily exceeds $750,000 compared to waiting until 65. That is the number most people never run. So what does this mean practically? If you want to retire at 60 and you want the math to actually work, not just barely work, but work without sequence risk erasing your plan in year 3, here's a rough benchmark. For a $60,000 a year lifestyle, you typically need north of $1.2 to $1.5 million in investable assets before you retire at 60. Not because you're spending $1.5 million, but because that's the cushion that makes the math survivable when markets don't cooperate. One strategy worth knowing: the TFSA bridge. The idea is simple. If you can keep your RRSP untouched until 65 and fund your early retirement years from your TFSA instead, you preserve your RRSP for later drawdown at potentially lower tax rates. You keep your TFSA withdrawals tax-free, and you reduce the taxable income that could otherwise claw back OAS when it starts. It doesn't fix the sequence risk problem, but it minimizes the tax drag on the years you're most vulnerable. The person retiring at 65 with the same lifestyle and the same asset base is in a fundamentally stronger position, because CPP and OAS immediately reduce the annual drawdown from savings, and the portfolio stops being the only thing between you and running out of money. The most common pushback I hear is, "I'll just do some part-time work." And honestly, that's a real lever. Part-time income of even $15,000 to $20,000 a year in your early 60s dramatically changes the drawdown math. But here's the honest version of that plan. Part-time income in your 60s requires that you stay physically able to work, that you find work you're willing to do, and that you don't lean on it as though it's as reliable as a government pension check. It's a real tool. It's just not a load-bearing wall. Build your plan around your guaranteed income, then let part-time work improve it. I want to be clear about something. None of this is an argument against retiring at 60. If your health is uncertain, if you have people you want to spend time with, if you've been deferring things for 4 decades that matter more than money, the financial argument for 5 more years is not the only argument. Time is a resource compound interest cannot replace. The point of running these numbers is not to guilt you into staying in a job you've outgrown. It's to make sure you're choosing 60 with your eyes open, knowing the real cost, building a plan that accounts for it, and not discovering the gap at age 68 when it's too late to course correct. 60 is a beautiful retirement age, if the math works. This video is about making sure you know whether the math works before you sign off. Here's what I want you to do this week. Pull up your CPP statement of contributions. You can get it from My Service Canada account in about 5 minutes. Find your estimated CPP payment at $65. Take 36% off that number. That's your monthly CPP at $60. Then multiply $728 by 60. That's the OAS you will need to cover from your own savings for 5 years. Then look at your current portfolio and ask yourself honestly, can this account absorb a 25% market drop in year 1 while I'm pulling $60,000 a year without permanently damaging my retirement? If the answer is yes, 60 might be your number. If you're not sure, 5 more years might be the best investment you ever make. The boring one wins. If this helped, subscribe. New video every week. No gurus, no hype, just math.